when we go back into time, you understand that these angels had children, and these children were giants, and they claimed to be gods, and they took over the world, and they said that they were gods. And the reason why God flooded the earth, God, Yahweh God, flooded the earth was to destroy their destruction that they were creating in society, in our humanity. And so it says that Noah was pure in generations. It means genetically pure. It means he was the only human left and his descendants. Okay? So when God flooded the earth, he was wiping away this angelic perversion of these gods. And these gods were the Greek gods. They said they were Hades and Zeus and Kratos. And when God wiped them out, it says in the Book of Enoch, it talks about this specifically. It says that they were not fully flesh and they were not fully human. And it says that when their bodies died, their spirits remained on the earth and were referred to as evil spirits. And these spirits continued on and repossessed into individuals to try to influence the world again. And so this has been the battle. So when you're looking at the old gods like Enki and all them, they were real. They were real. They were pre-flood. And that's why all their temples are all destroyed, also show water damage because they were destroyed in a flood. That's why they all have that.
Still not getting to the archaeological support for your interpretation. That's what I'm specifically asking for.
Okay, so all of the archaeological support points to this. Now, the reason why is because there is a narrative where these gods said, oh, I am the god of this, I'm the god of that, and I'm strong, and I've done this. And you can read their archaeological things, right? But if you just simply look at the biblical narrative of what these angels that were claiming to be gods were, there is gods that taught men metallurgy. There was angels that taught men metallurgy in the Book of Enoch, and it describes all of this. And you're like, oh, there's a god of war. There's an angel of war. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. Why is this old Book of Enoch, which was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is very, very valid and old, why is this eerily lining up with all the other gods that we see throughout history? Not just, and they're repeating. You know, the Greek gods are the same as the Roman gods. You know that, right? Okay, so, and they're the same as the Egyptian gods in some variation, okay? And you're like, wait, they're the same characters, the same entities throughout time. It's like, but their names are shifting a little bit. And then you have this biblical narrative that explains it.
Is that you're going with an interpretation that to me comes after what we know from the archaeological record to be the original interpretation. So I'm telling you my beliefs based upon specific archaeological records.
Sure.
And I feel like you're arguing after the fact and just going after the interpretation. And I don't feel that your rendition of the interpretation that you're putting out there, you're trying to say that interpretation points to archaeological evidence. And I'm just asking you honestly for it. Like, I don't see it. My interpretation is that it's kind of like this, right? So let's say that you meet me, you've known me for 6 months, and I'm telling you all these stories about these trips that I've been on, women I've dated, cars that I've had, et cetera, on and on and on. I'm telling you all these stories, right? And one day I'm like, hey, we're supposed to meet, go out to dinner or whatever. And I say, hey, I'm actually going to be a little late. My roommate, Sean, is going to let you in, just hang out with him for about an hour, right? So you go over to my house and you start talking to Sean, and Sean starts telling you the exact same stories, little differences, but the exact same stories. Like, oh, I had a rare Corvette. It wasn't, yellow, it was red. And you're just sitting there, you're like, damn, these stories are fucking similar, but I know that they can't both be true. I know that they live together. So I'm concluding that these stories happened to one person and the other person liked these stories and adopted them as their own.
Yeah.
And now you're thinking like, well, damn, who's telling the truth and who's the liar?
I got you.
And so Sean pulls out the photo book and starts showing actual pictures of these stories. So he has the actual proof. So it's like, that we lived in close contact. These are great stories. I want to sound cool, but he has the actual proof. So my interpretation of the archaeological record is that we can look at the Jewish people. We can see what their religion was before. We can see the specific event. It was very traumatic. King Nebuchadnezzar conquered them. They believed that it was, Yahweh and whatever name you want to give it. They believed that it was that God that gave power to King Nebuchadnezzar. And the archaeological record to me says that they didn't have these stories of Adam and Eve. They didn't have these stories of the flood. They did.
Well, how would we know that? We don't know that they didn't have those stories. There's no way to determine that. What you're doing is you're just assuming because this story here is similar that it couldn't have been Jewish.
Archaeology, I will grant it, it is not a perfect.
Yeah, it's not a photo album.
It is not a perfect science. However, I do feel that when you look at archaeological dating methods, that they are somewhat sound and reasonably credible.
Questionable.
No.
Very questionable.
And I get that, but my point there is that when you're objective and you have no emotional connection to it, then you're willing to admit, okay, you know what I mean? Maybe they're not perfect, but they do have some reasonableness to them. And from my perspective, I only see the people that have the emotional attachment to religion that are more willing to criticize these archaeological methods, because if the archaeological methods are sound, then the conclusions that they support just completely and totally dismantle their world belief.
I don't think completely and totally.
Well, I mean, if archaeological records are sound, the archaeological record, in my opinion, supports the analogy that I just gave you with Sean, that the Jewish religion that we know of it was invented after 587 BC.
Yeah, but the determining factor of what you're believing, whether it's sound or not, I don't think we can determine that that's actually the preface. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that that's actually what happened. I think we're determining because of something. Like, you can't dig in the dirt and figure out like what people believed. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't, just because we found tablets doesn't mean that that's everything.
So where does the original story though about let me tell you something. So being in Sunday school, right? And this is part of the reason why I told you I was 8 years old being in the Old Testament, and my father was a pastor. It was very, very, a lot of social pressure to believe. And it was the Old Testament in particular where I would read that and I would just think, this is hocus pocus bullshit at 8 years old. Like, you can't choose to be that person. That was just my logical mind. And I would shut the Bible and I'd rock back and forth and go, no, you believe, because there was just so much social pressure to believe. And I remember being in Sunday school in numerous different churches around the country, because we moved around all the fucking time. And every little kid seemed to always have an issue with one part in the Old Testament where it said that Adam and Eve were the first humans and that they had kids, and then all of a sudden their kids went out and married people. And I can't tell you how many Sunday school classes I was in, people raising their hands saying, did God create other people? Like, how did that make sense? Yeah. And in that interpretation, it doesn't make sense. The apologetics, the mental gymnastics you have to jump through to come up with a reasonable conclusion. So when I read Genesis of the Grail Kings, and it said that Adam and Eve weren't the first Homo sapiens, they were the first Homo sapiens sapiens, meaning the first Homo sapiens to have the blood of the gods infused with them, because Enki wanted mankind to be elevated to the status of a god. So that's why he infused the blood with them. Then it makes sense of, oh, this is how their children went out and married other people. So not even on, archaeological record, just on the mere basis of just fewer mental gymnastics, Occam's razor, the most simple explanation wins. This version, to me, from a logical standpoint, it just supports it that this was the original version.
So I think that the Bible doesn't have everything written down in it, and I don't think that there's every answer that you're going to find in it. I think that it's not, ultimately the biblical text that we have isn't, it's not just, it's a story. It's like telling you where we came from and how we got here, right? And so there's a narrative, but the narrative ultimately leads to Jesus, and Jesus is the example of how we were meant to live our life. Okay, and so I think the Bible, in a sense, is a historical, poignant thing to describe us to this point.
See, and I think
so you're not going to find every answer.
I think Jesus was talking about quantum mechanics and quantum physics and the quantum enigma. So in some of that, you know what I mean, I can believe like the actual like words of Jesus per se. I think there was a lot of credibility to that. It's when I talk about like my dark night of the soul experience. I don't know if you ever heard about that. But it's, a dark night of the soul is when you are just laid fucking bare. It's worse than rock bottom. It's complete and total annihilation. I went through a dark night of the soul experience sitting in a prison cell for the second time.
So you believe in having a soul?
Wherever you guys are watching this show, I would truly appreciate it if you follow or subscribe. It helps a lot with the algorithm. It helps us get bigger and better guests, and it helps us grow the team. Truly means a lot. Thank you guys for supporting, and here's the episode.